Lovely to be standing in front of you guys today. I know my name sounds like I'm Greek, but I'm very much from Essex, so you'll just have to deal with that accent, all right? I am a strength and conditioning coach with Glasgow Warriors. I know you're expecting to see Stuart Yule today. He's a very well-respected practitioner and a fantastic boss. He can't make it, but to be fair, it's going to be the same subject. It's mainly going to be me talking anyway, so we'll go from there. Today I'm going to be talking mainly about value and how we improve value. So I would say Ben's presentation was one end of the spectrum, mine will be right to the other end. And no matter what sport you're from, I hope this will resonate with you. My talk is mainly on principles, not necessarily data or detail. Principles are everything for me. The detail can be sorted out at another time and it's ever changing, but principles don't usually change unless you mature. The presentation is directed at the senior practitioner. I've been criticised with this presentation in the past that it should be directed at your up-and-coming sports science student, but I think principles are for everyone. And I hope you go away from this today just with something to think about, thinking about why you do what you do. There's something that links us all in this room, and that is we think that we can change. We think that we can provide change to the clubs or to the research that we work within. And I think that's why we're all here today. So whether we feel that we can provide change with an intervention, or whether we can help educate to provide change, or whether we can change behaviours in our players or in our coaches for the positive and for the greater good of performance, I think that's what we all share today. Now, to make a positive change, we need to be effective practitioners. And effectiveness, for me, has two factors. It has efficiency and value. Efficiency is the strength of our intervention, the robustness of our science, that would be efficiency for me. So it's how well we write our strength program. It's the type of load management we provide. Today I'm going to be talking about value. Value is the big one for me. What I think determines the strong sports scientist or strength and conditioning coach from the weak one or the inexperienced to the very experienced is their ability to gain value from the coaches and the players. We can all write the same program, but can we all get the same value? And this is going to be a lifelong mission for me as long as I remain in this job, is to be the best at getting value in what I'm doing and in what I'm providing. Value, if you don't like that term, can be called the buy-in or the engagement or compliancy. It doesn't matter what sport we work in, we need that if our quality scientific, well-researched programs are going to be used. I love to read about self-determination theory of motivation. It's a big part of how I try and get value out of the athletes. So self-determined theory of motivation requires autonomy supportive behaviours from the coach. This means that we allow the athlete to feel like they have a choice in the decision-making process. It's an athlete-centred environment. The athlete, if you do this right, should say, I do this because I know why it works and I want to do this to get better. I'm not going to go too much into the theory. It's a psychological principle, but for me that's just coaching. But there's also another aspect apart from autonomy, that's competency. And an athlete who feels competent or has high levels of perceived competency will say, I know where I'm at, I know where I need to be, and I know how I'm doing. And so this is where the feedback links in. How well did you do in that session? What could we do better? And why should you do better? There's also a third factor, which is relatedness. An athlete who feels related is part of a support system. They feel supported and they feel like they're part of a bigger picture. An athlete who has a high perceived relatedness. We'll say, I am doing this because I feel my role models are doing it and I feel it's better for the bigger picture. And if we can get an athlete who feels autonomous, who feels competent and related, we're going down an excellent track. So what I'm going to talk to you about today are the principles that Stuart, myself, and Thibaut Giroux, the three S&C coaches at Glasgow Warriors, as well as our fantastic coaching and analyst team at Glasgow Warriors, because none of this happens without them. These are the principles that we remind ourselves of every day as we're talking to the athletes, as we're providing feedback, whether it be verbal or written. These are the principles we remind ourselves of. First one is that we must educate. Players will not engage with something if they don't know why that they're doing it. A greater understanding from the players means they'll provide a greater value to the work you're doing with them. And a greater value has increased autonomy. They do the work because they want to do the work. They are going to work harder in the next session because they know why it will benefit them, and they will work harder in the next session. It's getting gains out of your athletes by doing absolutely nothing apart from chatting to them. And I think that's the beauty of coaching. Education doesn't always have to come from presentations. So the pre-season presentation, maybe your checkpoint presentations, you might do one on hydration, on work rate, on what this means, what that means. It doesn't have to come from that. The beauty for us is that we can educate a player just from an informal chat. And this is nothing new, right? The good coaching has been going on since coaching started, so I'm just recycling old information. But it's those discreet chats that we have with the players that really matter. What did you think of that feedback? Oh, I didn't understand this. What does it mean? Chance for education. Why do I have to work harder in that game in that small-sided game? It's got nothing to do with rugby. Well, education. So it's those conversations that really matter to us at Glasgow Warriors. This, again, is another big one for me. And I know I look like I'm 12, but I'm nearly 30, and I've been in the game maybe about 8 years. And when I started out, I wanted to be that practitioner who used all the research and p-values, effect sizes, and amazing feedback sheets, loads of numbers, percentages, colours. It made me look bloody intelligent, really, really clever. Sorry for the swearing. But no, the work we do is not for us. We can't go home at night feeling satisfied that we put out something that made us look really good. For me, all of our feedback from the GPS monitoring and from testing has to be about the athlete. So I don't believe in the practitioner doing published research. Because I know that from my experience, when I've published research, my eye completely went off the ball. And I'd start doing things with the athletes to benefit my own name. Maybe that's my problem, not necessarily anyone else's in the room. My job is to assist the coach and the athlete. Will this information help? Or does it just make me look good? I think it's exactly the same as Ben said. Is it interesting or is it useful? We have to ask ourselves the same things. And the more interesting things we say to the coach, just dilute all the really useful things we say. We also have to understand that, yes, I'm at a GPS conference talking about that GPS is not rugby. Physical performance is not rugby. And so we also have to have real humility. And we try and have that at Warriors, that the humility to say, okay, what we're doing is not the be-all and end-all for these players. Just because he didn't train that well in the gym doesn't mean he's a bad person. Just because they didn't work hard in that one session in their small-sided game, because it doesn't look like rugby, doesn't mean they're not performing well. We have to understand and we have to have that humility that we are a very small cog in a large machine. So we can't be giving feedback to the coach on a player about something that isn't important, just because it's important to us. Something I have to get a lot better at is the language that I use in my reports. So I have an awful habit of showing a bias. This was a poor work rate from so-and-so. His work rate over the last few weeks has been an issue. Stuart comes down on me like a ton of bricks, and rightly so, every time I do this. That's providing my bias in what should be a fairly objective piece of information. And so for me, that's a big one. Also using the words really good, large, not very good. Again, these are all subjective ways of feeding back that can have a massive impact for completely the wrong reasons. Another one for me is that no one cares about my fancy stats. So no one, Gregor Townsend, the coach, doesn't care what an effect size is. Stuart Hogg doesn't care what an effect size or a p-value is. So let's create feedback that provides a very simple message, even though to us this may look completely oversimplified. Let's provide a simple message and let's provide feedback that then can create discussion. Let's not shove all our statistical knowledge into our feedback that we provide the coaches and players. And again, this lecture, this presentation is sort of a presentation to myself and my past self as well. So I'm definitely not trying to condescend, patronize anyone in the audience. I suppose this is a good bit of critical thinking for me. So this is something we provide the coaches with every day. Sure, what is moderate, heavy? It isn't, but the coaches like this. They ask for a simplified version, and we have to have the humility to say, right, we'll go for that. A massive part of providing feedback for the players or for the coaches is knowing what makes them tick. We have to get away from our computers. We have to go talk to the athlete. We have to understand why do they love their sport. When we understand why they love their sport, we can start directing every conversation we have at why it will improve that aspect of their sport. It's been an absolute game changer for me asking them that final question. And this kind of information cannot be achieved in Excel. It cannot be achieved in open fields. We have to have that link to the players. And so I know that my players, especially these two and others, they love competition. And they love knowing if what they did made them get better. So we provide really simple feedback to the players on a very specific element of the training. So I don't usually provide feedback on the GPS stats for lots of rugby, because rugby is rugby. The coaches provide lots of feedback on that. When we have a small-sided game, I might provide a work rate, so meters per minute or something like that. Doesn't really matter as long as it gets them working hard. And I'll tell them if it was high or moderate high, and if you're in a good colour, you made a gain from there. And sure, I've designed these high and moderate high, moderate low, all of that. They're all based on effect sizes, but the players don't need to know this. So let's keep it simple and colourful. Let's keep it bold and bright and easy to read. And let's rank them from 1 to 30. Let's show them how good they were. Let's cause a bit of debate. Let's cause a bit of banter in the changing room. Let's have them all getting up into that yellow zone. The third principle is always asking, how can we help you? So as a young buck, I worked with Irish hockey, and the guy with the ball was the head coach, Darren Smith. And previously I'd worked in football and athletics and swimming and read loads of research on hockey. And all the questions that we were asking in those sports and those teams for those coaches, I thought, yeah, I know what I'm doing. I'll impress them. And with my feedback and my testing, I tried to answer the same questions. I know nothing. I don't run the program. I don't pick the team. I don't play hockey. I haven't been an international hockey player. We should put ourselves at a level where we know nothing. We need to ask the coaches what expertise that we have can help you. I made a huge mistake guessing what the coaches want. I put hours and hours of work into researching and answering their own questions that I made. All wasted. He never read a thing. He was not engaged at all. And why? Because he had no autonomy over the feedback that he was getting. I had decided what he was getting. So no autonomy, no value in my work, and we had obviously no change in performance. Maybe if I'd done a better job, we could have had a more successful few years together, potentially. So the question, how can I help you, is massive for us at Warriors as well. A fourth principle that we use a lot is state less and question more. I would much rather ask a question of a player than tell them how well they did. And why? Well, questions, the way that we frame the question and the question that we ask is our way of providing a limit or a constraint on the autonomy that they have. I'm sending them down some sort of route. However, because we're asking the player a question and we're giving them the ability to answer, they have that autonomy over how they answer and how they perceive their own answer and use it in the future. The athletes, the players value these questions, and of course they're going to value their own answer because they decided to answer it in that way. A statement does not facilitate knowledge. It creates a knowledge that no one is asking for. A question allows the athlete to facilitate their own knowledge. And if you're into the spectrum of data, information, knowledge, wisdom, that transfer from information, i.e. the feedback that I'm providing, to knowledge should be facilitated by the athlete or by the coach. This, in my opinion. We can start to state when the athlete is so engaged, when the athlete really wants to improve, they want to feel more competency. They've chosen to improve, so loads of autonomy, that they then ask us, how do you think I can do better? And that's when we can start providing them with more education. We can start adding a few more statements because, sure, they've asked us. So we've given them autonomy. We're answering what they've asked us. And this is massive for me. So yeah, again, when I used to have athletes, I come out of uni, into a job in another university, telling athletes what they should be doing and how they're done. Really regretful of that time. So it's almost a very sad story I'm telling you here, isn't it? You don't know what you don't know, eh? So these are examples of how we ask questions, and yeah, you can criticize this. Horrible colours, 3 questions, maybe too many, potentially. So I'm trying to cut that down. I have done since January. So we gave them some work rates for some games. They were told that the games in the session were an opportunity for them to develop certain aerobic qualities or work rate qualities. We call it capacity at Warriors. We try and use language that they'd use. So we gave them a long list. We rated them, the 3 games, an average of all games. Very, very simple. No stats, nothing. Highlighted it if it looked good based off stats that we'd had from other games. So it's all robust, if you wish, as robust as practical feedback can be. But where I see the beauty of this is the questions that we ask. So Stuart, T-Bow and myself will sit there, look at the information and go, how do we think we want the players to perceive this? Where could I have worked harder to get the most out of today's session? We have provided them with that information. 3 types of game. They can see where they could have worked harder, but we'll let them perceive their own answer how they wish. We do this every sort of Monday or whenever these games are, so we try and bring a longitudinal aspect into it. We try and get them to rate themselves against previous performances, and am I always towards the lowest? What can I do to change? Then we've got to add a positive in. One of Gregor Townsend's big elements of his coaching at Warriors is that we celebrate effort and we say well done. So am I always training with a high work rate? Why? And what can I do to remain at the top? In a dream world for me, 2 lads are sitting next to each other in the change room. One's answering the red one, one's answering the green one. Discussion, learning. One looks up to the other as a role model. And it's a long-term goal for us at Warriors to get that sort of environment. But we hope that we're going towards that with asking them questions. Instead of you and you, rubbish. You and you, great, well done. That's information, that's not knowledge. Let them work out what they could have done better. They'll come back to us, or we'll go down in the morning and we'll talk to them. Did you see the feedback last night? Blah, blah, blah. This is a Stuart Yule slide here, so this is something he was really keen to talk about, and I'll try and do him justice. Stuart believes in a constant review of what we're monitoring and why. I joined Warriors in June last year, and it was a huge shock to the ego. You do something that is good quality work that you believe, well researched. You've worked hard on it, it looks good. Stuart goes, nice. You give yourself that pat on the back, sit down, and he goes, it'll do for now. But we need to improve this, this, and this. And that is every single day with every single thing. Stuart is someone who is never quite content, and I like that. It's a really good attitude, because we are always looking to continually improve, and I'm going to try and show you some examples later. Stuart is also huge on this phrase, which is specific feedback for specific events. So we don't provide a session report, a standard session report every day. It's too easy. That's not continual improvement. That's a lot of good work in pre-season to find a structure and then just giving it to Gregor every day. That's not continual improvement. We provide a different report every day. I think no two reports have ever looked the same, or we haven't asked the same questions. Always trying to keep the players and the coaches engaged. I know from having interns before that when I get the same feedback every day, yeah, it's great for the first month, and then you start to only pick and choose the things that you like looking at. You look at probably the wrong things, there's no real annotation on it, and you end up not looking at it at all and not taking it seriously. So a specific feedback for a specific event, we asked Gregor, how can we help you? And he's talking about long periods of play in matches. A theory of his that if you win the long periods from a psychological and a physical point of view, you're then hopefully going to win the next period, and then maybe the next. Or if you win the long period, how do we then perform in the next period, and so on and so on and so on. So we try to provide specific feedback for specific events. But this isn't good enough. This is trying to relate rugby to meters per minute, which it most certainly isn't. I very much doubt that 40% of the fatigue in rugby comes from running, especially for the forwards. So this is something we're going to have to massively improve on if we want to do our continual development and our continual improvement. And Stuart is constantly pushing myself and the analysts to do a better job. Another thing Stuart and Gregor brought in, Stuart went to Gregor, how can we help a very small part of the game? And Gregor would talk, and restarts was one of them. He wanted to know the effort going into restarts. Because if you've conceded points, we then want to score the next points. That's one of Gregor's philosophies of how will we win. And so very simply, we can just provide that feedback. So again, continual improvement, and this has improved a lot. We used to compare it to a poor estimation of their max speed, and we've tried to add a bit more scientific robustness, but we are answering the questions that the coaches are asking. And so now we're getting to a little bit of a story about how this match feedback has improved. And all the improvements that I show you, or how I believe it's improved, are not necessarily due to myself or Stuart or Thibaut thinking about these things. This is purely from saying to Gregor, saying to the players, what do you think? Hit us. Is it good? Is it bad? How does it need to improve? And again, just asking questions, answering them. Asking questions, answering them. Massive engagement. So this is how we started. We wanted to know the work rates of our players during ball in time in rugby. Because before this, we were doing full match. Didn't matter if the ball was in or out of play. We were just getting distances and loads and realising that it actually didn't illustrate and match physical performance. Okay, Murchie, Horn, Price, Horn all love this stuff. The back three absolutely love it because it makes them look fantastic. The forwards couldn't have been more critical, and rightly so. So we sucked that ego in. We thought this was pretty good. We sucked it in. What needs to improve? Our props down the bottom. I'm not a runner. Yeah, I have to run. But how do you know I wasn't in 24 tackles? How do you know I didn't clear 17 rucks? That's not running. Can you pick that up? No. Do a better job. Fine. Get together with the analysts, which is probably the single best thing we've done as a sports science or strength and conditioning team, is understand that GPS cannot tell us everything in rugby, but the analysts can fill in so many blanks. And so we decided on what incidents or what involvements we were going to use, and we provided a rugby work rate as well. All right, now the forwards have a far greater value in this. The backs, not so much. They're looking at the running because a lot of the involvements were forward related. We have now gone to the forwards. We've asked them a question. They've criticised us, said, can you do a better job? Can you tell me more? And I'll buy into this. We've gone back to the drawing board, got with the analysts, come back to the forwards. For a forward to see that happen, we hope they felt massively related. They had a support team asking them a question, working hard to answer it. And for us, that was our goal. So yeah, we started off poorly. We started off with stuff that was interesting but not useful. Now we're getting more towards the useful side, just from asking questions and answering them for the players. Next question they asked was, okay, that's great, and we told them that the green meant it was good compared to that match, but did I do any better from other games? Right, you're right. We don't tell you this. We only give you an acute view, not a longitudinal view. Great stuff. So now I have this monstrosity of colour that we started a few games ago. We now, again, using effect sizes. I think I can change the language. I don't know if players want to see moderate low or moderate high. I can probably ask players, what language would you use? Use that. Great, more autonomy. So I've got this colour. Now it's comparisons to their season's worth of data and yeah, effect sizes and so on. So I'm trying to make it statistically robust without throwing it all over their faces. But now we have an idea of what was your rugby work rate, what was your running work rate like. Gregor looked at this and went, I don't understand it. There's so much colour. What am I looking at here? I want to know who didn't put in a physical performance and who did. And this was gutting for me because there's so many Excel formulas that I tried to learn to make this. You know what it's like when you're master of Excel at 2 a.m, you go to Gregor and he's like, yeah, nah, it's no good, right? What can I do for you then? I just want to know very simply. And this is where we are. So this is us against, against Leinster the other day. So we've done all this work. Gregor's leaving for Scotland anyway, so I don't know if we're going to use it again next year, but we'll see. And it's just an idea of who had a high rugby work rate, who had a high running work rate, and then you can filter yourself down. From a scientific point of view, from a research point of view, no numbers. Oh my God. I need numbers, I need stats. No, we need to answer to the needs of our coaches and of our athletes. Gregor liked this. He said, I can do something with this. It went up in a meeting. As soon as the players see Gregor engage in something, there's that relatedness. There's that competency. Geez, Gregor's looking at this. Gregor cares about this. Let's go for it. We don't always have to reject good stats or more complex graphs and so on. This is something myself and Peter Tierney of Leinster are working together on, was maybe providing a different way of looking at things, maybe a balance between simplicity and more information. So where exactly were you on the Crossfire chart? And it was great because we played Leinster and Pete and I sharing data, and as long as your coaches let you, it's a fantastic thing to go through because we never know if we've won matches or lost them due to physical performance. until you know the other team's physical performance. So it's something that these kind of conferences would be great to start up between people. But now we can start to see which players are in the green for running, which players are in the green for rugby work rate, and we can go from there. Maybe too complicated, maybe too much work, maybe too much to look at, I don't know. We're still going to go back to the coaches and players and say, is this useful? Because if it's not useful to them, then they're not going to engage in it, and they're not going to then try and work harder. And that is the point of my job. Is it working? I would never relate one thing to match performance or season performance. And that is if we'd finished top or if we finished mid-table, which we have. But there have been improvements in work rate in certain sessions that we have provided feedback on. And whether that's because we're feeding back to the coaches to say, well, we're not quite matching match intensity, you wanted to match it, let's think of ways to improve work rate, so less rest, fewer plays all over the pitch, so there's less walking and so on. I don't know, but it doesn't matter. Boys are working harder or the drills are more intense. It's okay. If I don't, if I finish my day at work, go to my own training, come back and do the report at 9 or 10 at night, I will have 2 or 3 texts on my phone from players saying, where's the report? In quite a polite way, to be fair. But for me, that's fantastic. Players are engaged. They want to answer the questions that we pose. They want to know if they beat their mate. They might have been a replacement on the weekend and they want to prove that they can work harder than everyone else. So the fact that I get bugged by them to give them more feedback is an absolute dream come true for a strength and conditioning or sports scientist, I believe. From one-on-one conversations with the players, some don't read it. It's true, and maybe more education is required. I don't think it's something we do that well at Warriors. It's something we need to improve, something certainly I need to improve. But some players read it a lot and give me a lot of good critical feedback. A lot of our feedback goes up in meetings as well, and I love that the coaching staff are engaged in it, and I think the reason is nothing to do with me, but it's just because they've asked the right questions and we're just answering them for them. And they're absolutely great questions from the coaching staff as well, incredibly intelligent bunch. This is the percentage of players training above match running work rates in certain drills that are designed to run the players. Yes, they are rugby related, but the goal of the drills is to work at a high running intensity. And so whether that's due to the feedback or the coaches using the feedback or the players using the feedback, I don't know, but I like that a lot. Could be they're getting fitter, potentially. This is a line speed drill we have, and when we first did it, players on average were getting 6 acceleration meters. I won't go into the details of the drill. The defense coach was distraught, asked me by watching it, he said, this doesn't look right, they look slow. George, I want some information on whether I'm right or wrong. Answered it for him, we fed back in the player report, it went up in the meetings, and now we're up there. So we're 4 times more explosive than we used to be, purely because a coach asked a flipping brilliant question, and it was my job or Stuart's job to answer it. There's lots of things that I need to do better, so I know I've been quite happy about stuff we're doing and saying it's going really well, but something I think I really need to get better at is, I ignore the middlemen. The middlemen are the ones who are always hitting average. You never quite notice them because they're never amazing, they're never rubbish. I'd usually have conversations with the top 3 or 4 to say, good work, because we celebrate effort. And I have conversations with the bottom, what was going on? What wasn't right? You usually get very honest answers. But what about these middlemen? These are the cruisers, the lads that just do enough not to be spoken to, but never do enough to make those incredible gains. So that's something I need to be much, much better at in the future. It's a lot more work, but there we go. As I've said to you before, somewhere I need to improve is to reduce my bias through language. And the big one for me, and it's if the next coaching staff buy in, is identifying the physical targets of the session prior to the session. So often we provide feedback to the players and they were like, I was focusing on the technical side, I didn't realise it was a physical drill. Can you let me know next time? Brilliant. Absolutely superb feedback. So can we stick a note up on the door? Can we send them a WhatsApp saying, lads, there's 2 drills in here that you're going to be fed back on. There are opportunities to make gains. Let's do it. Finally, do I help provide an overload of information? At Warriors, there's an incredibly analytic feel to our coaching staff. Am I just adding information that the players don't need? I'd rather they process their game data and their video stats than read about their work rate in a game we call transition touch. I don't know. It's a question we all need to ask ourselves. How much education is necessary? What is useful and what is interesting? I don't know the answer to that yet. More education for me required. So my summary, be autonomy supportive. Provide them with the feelings of autonomy, with competency and relatedness. Use questions to explore. Use questions to create thought, and of course, use questions to eventually create discussion. And thank you very much for listening. Cheers.